the Charleston King Street bid. So as you will recall, last year you all approved the mid for King Street, which we call a bid. As part of that approval, we require that that the bid come forward each year to submit a work plan and budget for the coming year. Obviously, this is our first year, so we're trying to do kind of everything kind of all at once. And so we're ready to disperse those funds that were collected from this first year of the bid to the CDA and to the bid operator, which Jane is going to be overseeing for that group. And we wanted to really quickly get a presentation on what the expected expenses for the year are anticipated to be in the kind of the work program. This is really a kickoff year for the bid. And so there'll be a number of things that they'll get started this year. And then they'll be in full production for next year. One of the big ones is the ambassador program. I'll let Jane go into more detail on that, but real quickly, Jane Jenkins is joining the CDA in the bid from work that she's done elsewhere, and I'll let her go into her background. But we, in planning with BNS, Meg, we are super excited to have her join the CDA team and kind of be the founding director, if you would, for the bid. Just she brings such a wealth of experience to this that this will help ensure that the Charleston experience will be completely on an upward trajectory and in good hands. So with that, Jane, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the mayor and the committee members, talk a little bit about your history, and then present the proposed work plan / budget for this year for the bid, please. And you need to unmute yourself, unfortunately.
Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon to the mayor and the members of the city council. As Robert said, I'm Jane Jenkins, and I'm serving as the interim executive for the Charleston Downtown Alliance with the specific purpose of launching the Business Improvement District. I have over 37 years in downtown management experience. Most recently, I spent 14 years as the president and CEO of the Downtown Oklahoma City Partnership. And prior to that, I served 9 to 10 years as the president and CEO of the Downtown Boulder, Colorado Partnership, and then in various Main Street programs before that. I actually have a connection to Charleston. My family moved to Mount Pleasant in the very early 70s. And so I finished high school there. And so my entire family still lives here. I say that if I'm blood related to them, they live in Charleston, on Daniel Island, my parents, and my sister lives on Johns Island, and her children live in Charleston too. So this is kind of a homecoming for me. When I was in college, I spent my breaks, my summer, spring break, Christmas break, working for Bob Reagan, who was then the tax assessor for Charleston County. And I worked in the tax assessor's office, so I know what a TMS number is. And so I'm excited to be able to be here working in familiar territory and being able to launch this bid for King Street. Needless to say, King Street has changed a great deal in the years since I spent extended time here, but it's still an exciting place to be. I wrote my high school senior English term paper in the library that is now the Hotel Bennett. So, you know, there've been quite a few changes since then. So is somebody going to run my slides, or do you want me to do them? Meg.
I can do it for you, Jane, if you'd like.
Okay. I mean, I can do them from here, whichever way you want.
Whatever is easiest for you.
If it's better for you to share a screen, that's great with me, because then I don't have to worry about it.
Sure.
Okay. So we are the Charleston Downtown Alliance, and this is our draft budget for the fiscal year 23. I know we're still working on a draft, but what I wanted to show you in that first slide is we actually do have a logo now. It will go before the board meeting tomorrow, and there will also be a King Street bid logo that we're still working on, but this is like brand new, hot off the press, and so the first time anybody else has seen it. So moving on, this is kind of an overview of the budget, and you'll see this again at the end, so you don't have to try to capture all the numbers. But if you look at the totals at the bottom, the annual budget total for CDA is approximately $1.1 million. And that's what was initially budgeted in the operations agreement or the improvement plan for downtown. Of that, we anticipate $730,000, or approximately 2/3 of those dollars, to come from the assessment, the business improvement district, and then approximately $370,000, or 1/3 of the budget, to come from other sources. And so either in kind or other sources, and we're still determining what those are. So moving forward, I'm going to kind of go through our buckets and where we are with each line item here. Okay, the big one is the street services and the ambassador program. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, what I have done is, if it's in green, that means that we intend for the bid dollars to cover those expenses. If it's in yellow, that means it's an in-kind service. Later on, you'll see blue, and the blue will represent either a partnership or a different type of funding source other than the assessment. So block by block services are primarily for hospitality and clean and safe. And I just basically copied a couple of the pictures of ambassadors from Jacksonville, Florida, to show you that they will be greeting the public and representing downtown and King Street, as well as cleaning and sweeping and such as that. They actually started today, and they're in training. We have 5 full-time employees, and they are in training today. And so that means in about 2 weeks, they're going to be on the street, and you'll start to see them on King Street doing their jobs. The rent and utilities for block by block for their operations center will be provided by the bid, and then vehicle parking is being graciously covered by the city of Charleston. So that's why that's marked in yellow. This makes up of the bid funds. This is over 50% of the bid revenue that will go towards this program. And I think that this was identified as probably the greatest need. As an aside, let me tell you that I launched a program similar to this in Oklahoma City about 2 years ago, and it has made an absolute world of difference in branding, in image, and in the appearance of downtown Oklahoma City. So I think you'll be very pleased. And it's the same company, block by block. Okay, next slide. Our next bucket item is beautification. And many of you are familiar with the flower baskets that are along King Street. Well, we put these in our budget, but we hope to get partners that can help us take care of the expense of maintenance and keeping those beautiful. But we are going to add some of our own flowers to King Street. We're going to start with the flower trees, and you see a picture of them on the slide, the pink flowers. We will have 4 of these, and they will be on the corner of Calhoun and King Street. There'll be one on each corner, which is, of course, a very significant corner in our corridor. And so we hope to get started on this really soon, because it will make a huge difference again at intersection. And then when I say other landscaping, we have yet to determine what the needs are until we get the ambassadors out on the street and we kind of get feedback from them. So moving forward with the slides. We have program and destination management. The bid is not contributing or focusing a lot on this particular line item in this particular year because we feel like we have to get the physical appearance and the ambassadors launched, et cetera. But one of the things we are going to do is programming development. We're going to look at trying to do a calendar for small programs and such as that to kind of know what would fit in. We have to look at what else is out there. And then we will look to our partners and sponsors for implementation of either an event or a program, murals and art installation. And then, of course, some of you I met at a meeting last month where we talked about holiday decor. And again, this is another in-kind service from the city for the tree and activities on Marion Square. We are going to look at what else we might be able to contribute, but I'll tell you right now for this budget, we have 0 in the budget because we had not planned to do anything, but we're going to talk to some potential partners and see if we can change that, but that's where we stand right now. And then the next slide is marketing and promotion. Communications and collateral, again, is going to be a partnership between the bid and then other organizations. And I know that that's, rather broad, but you see kind of another flyer from Jacksonville. This is to advertise for hiring ambassadors, but there will be something that looks similar to this that we will develop once we get the ambassadors out on the street, that we will deliver to each business on King Street and others so that they will know, and so they can identify the ambassadors and they will know what to expect. That's one of our priorities, is to communicate the fact that the program is going to be on the street. And as part of that, we'll look at some general branding and identity. I happened to see today, I'm sorry I couldn't get here this weekend, but I saw the banners around downtown for the bridge run. And I'm hoping that we can, at least on King Street, put some branding of our logos for King Street and such on some banners there. This is just a brand new thing. I don't know what the rules are surrounding it. So just know that it's just an idea. And then we have to get a landing page and our website kicked off and running. And we are still working on trying to get access to the URLs that were reserved for that website. But I promise you that's a huge priority for me, because I want to be able to point people to that website. I know Meg and her colleagues want to be able to point people to that website. It will not be a real dynamic website, but it will be a place that you can go to get initial information. Okay, moving forward. Okay, economic development. The first thing that the board has expressed an interest in is an economic impact study. And I just put as a visual there the cover of the one that we just completed, or is actually still in progress, for Bricktown in Oklahoma City. This will be our main project for this fiscal year to get this done. And again, it's going to be a partnership. The bid will donate some dollars, and hopefully we'll have partners that will donate some dollars to getting this done. The first thing we have to do is get an RFP and get some responses to that. But we're also going to focus on recruitment and retention. Of course, we think that what we're doing with the ambassador program and the fact that we have a downtown organization and that we're representing the property owners and the businesses is the best form of business retention that there is. And so that will sort of be ongoing. But we're also going to look to work with partners, our property owners, our brokers, and such as that on the recruitment side of things, probably later to come. But there's the International Council of Shopping Centers and other organizations that I've worked with in the past for retail recruitment. So we hope to be able to at least have that. This is part of our plan anyway to get this done. And then next. Oh, I don't have any visuals for this. This is just the organizational stuff with overhead and management. We have a budget for salaries and benefits. I'm actually a 1099 employee currently with a 6-month contract that will expire in August, but it can be renewed if we're not where we want to be to hire full-time staff. There will be some business travel, memberships. I think this is important. We will join the International Downtown Association. the Urban Land Institute, and the International Economic Development Council to be able to develop relationships within those organizations and bring contacts and services to downtown Charleston. Also some professional services, legal, accounting, etc. We have to have telephone, and then of course a PO box and postage and insurance. All of these things will be covered by the bid. The office, the parking, supplies, equipment, and internet services are all going to be donated in kind. So that's why that color is yellow. And then I think I have one more slide, maybe. Okay, so this is back to the all over budget to see if I can answer any questions about where we are. If you look at street services and ambassador programs, you'll see our annual budget for that is $427,840. And of that, $424,000 is going to come from the bid. And in this particular case, $3,840 of it is coming in kind, in this case from the city. And you can read it that way all the way down. For street beautification, we have $175,000 budgeted. The bid is going to cover $50,000 of that, and other or in-kind partners will cover $125,000. And so you can just sort of read down that way to see where we end up at the bottom line, which is roughly $1.1 million for an annual budget, with $730,000 coming from the assessment and approximately $370,000 coming from in-kind or other sources. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. I know that numbers and budgets are kind of out there, but we do not have an approved budget from the board yet, and so but I wanted to get it in front of you. So, but rather than waiting for the board. And actually, I am kind of looking at this particular budget as the work plan for FY23, at least for this year, and then moving into the beginning of FY24, because the budget specifies projects and some things specifically that we're going to work on. So hopefully this time next year we'll have a more detailed work plan, but for now, we're going to let the budget be our work plan.
And Amy and members of council, that was the intention with this item, with the understanding that we would be doing our disbursement of the assessment to the CDA. They've supplied BFRC with the necessary documentation that's needed so that we can do that, so that they can get started with things, including rollout of the ambassador program.
I'm happy to answer questions, Robert, if anyone has any at this time. I know we'll have some as we go along, but if you have any now, I'm happy to answer them.
So, Jane, Mayor Tecklenburg here.
Hello, Mayor.
Can you hear me? Welcome again to Charleston. We're so glad to have you, particularly given your return home, so to speak, but also because of the terrific background you have, experience that you have with this sort of thing. So that it just seems made in heaven. Welcome. So
thank you.
Just curious, I couldn't see the screen, but you mentioned marketing and banners and all like that. I was just curious whether we thought of using like a new name, or I mean, are we marketing our thing as the CDA, the Charleston Development Alliance, or Downtown Alliance, or did y'all consider like something new, like the Holy City Business District, or just something different?
Well, I think the Charleston Downtown Alliance is kind of like the umbrella organization for whatever might grow out of these efforts. And so we are going to be using that, but we're also going to have a logo and specifically brand King Street, because the assessment dollars that are there are coming from the property owners on King Street. And so that logo is still being worked on, but the ambassador, as well as a color palette, but the ambassadors will be branded with both logos. But we want people to know that that this is the, the Charleston Downtown Alliance is really the parent organization. That's the organization that technically that I am working for now, and where we will put all of our, payroll and such as that.
Yeah,
but
right. No, I meant
but
the
I
name
don't
that
know
like
if
somebody walking on the street would see, like on your uniform or your sign. You're saying you're gonna accentuate King Street.
yes.
I think that makes sense.
Yes, there will be a brand for King Street, and while it will be the prominent brand, there will also be either we're waiting to get we have the Charleston Downtown Alliance logo, but we're also going to have a CDA logo that can go on the sleeve. But the main brand will be with King Street, and at least while I've been involved, Mayor, there hasn't been any discussion of any other alternate brand other than the Charleston Downtown Alliance.
Well, King Street makes a lot of sense. I get it, but I think that's better than promoting CDA.
Right.
Right. Got it. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? If not, we really appreciate the presentation and welcome.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome home. Amy, we go to the fees next, right?
Yes, sorry, let me share my screen again. And then just to kind of talk about this a little bit. This had all kind of happened a little weird because with the Charleston Downtown Alliance, I mean, because of the way the calendar worked really when we approved everything. So we'll be doing this more during our budget process. They'll be bringing it forward during our budget process. So it kind of all lines up, just to let you know that that's how it'll work going forward.
Okay.
It's just the way the timing of everything worked that it was a little different this year. So everybody's good with that? We can move forward?
Yes.
Okay. So just a quick update on our current city fees. We're meeting with departments and working on updating schedules. We're planning to have most of those changes updated prior to the end of 2023, but some of them might also have to go into the 2024 budget, just depending on timing and how quickly we can review everything and make sure everything is squared away. This is what we're looking at. So right now we're actively working on motor coach permits, tourism ticket fees, carriage medallion fees, tour guide study notes, and special event fees. We've established work groups for building inspection permits, engineering permits, and garbage cart fees. And we still have to schedule and start working on fire permits, stormwater permits, and certificate of public conveyance, just to kind of let you know where we are. Any questions on any of those? Okay. So additional fees, because we had some of this discussion, we had some homework we needed to do for all of you from the last meeting that we were in. And we told you we would get with livability and tourism and start looking at what fees other local governments are charging for tourism or tourists. What we found is that other municipalities in South Carolina are solely relying on hospitality fees and state and local accommodations taxes, just like we are. And you know that those are restricted for the most part to promoting tourism, not necessarily mitigating the impact of tourism on our cities. And there's counties that collect a threshold of revenue over $900,000 or more are allowed to utilize the funds for the provision of public safety services and other government service to tourists. And we do that. I just want to remind you of that. And that's how we came up with that calculation during our 2023 budget discussions and how we're transferring more money from hospitality into our general fund. So we are doing that to the extent that we feel we can justify those costs. So I just want to remind you of that. And then other South Carolina municipalities charge permits and fees for bus and carriage tours as well. We did find that our fees are lower than most of those. So we're working on updating those fees as part of our fee review initiative this year as well. Do you have any questions on that? Okay. And then we looked at other states as well. So other states have similar accommodations and hospitality type taxes with similar restrictions. However, the rates are not capped like ours are. So you know that we're grandfathered into our accommodations tax and our hospitality fee. But it has to, the state restricts us to 3% within the county and 4%, but we're at 4% because county has 2 and we have 2 because we're grandfathered in. But really, if something happened, the county would have the 2% and we would only be allowed to do 1%. So whenever I say we need to be careful about what we're doing with all of this so that we don't lose our grandfathered status, that's what could happen, because that's how it's capped for jurisdiction and county. So because we're grandfathered in, we can have that 2%. Does that make sense? And it's the same with hospitality as well. So that's how they restrict us. So they restrict us in the way that we can use the money or the taxes, fees, whatever you want to call it. And they're also restricting the amount that we can charge as well. So we're restricted in both ways. And then other taxes are also assessed in other states, such as room or excise taxes with a flat rate fee per night on hotel rooms, which is kind of sort of what Councilmember Seekings and Councilmember Appel were talking about the last meeting. But those are taxes, they're not fees, and they're called excise taxes on the hotel bills. Again, this is other states, not South Carolina. I'm just kind of giving you information to think about. And those taxes seem to be, they can use those for other services like roads and bridges, but that's outside of South Carolina. So we did find that in other states. So that was something like that, since it's a tax, we would have to go to the state to get permission to do something like that. Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, so Amy, I'm just somewhat concerned about, we're grandfathered in. Does that mean if we weren't involved in this A tax earlier on, that or hospitality tax earlier on, that we would not be grandfathered in and we could raise these rates? I'm just making sure I understand what you're telling us.
What happened is we already had our 2%. The state, after we had already established that 2%, the state changed it and put a cap on it. But because we were already at 2%, they couldn't take it away from us. So that's what I mean about grandfathered in. So if we weren't already a part of that and hadn't already charged at 2%, we would have been stuck at 1%, if that makes sense. Okay. See what I mean? That's why we're grandfathered in, because we had it before they changed the law.
We're grandfathered in on a good way, not a bad way.
Yes, in a good way, not a bad way.
I was misunderstanding.
Right. So that's why we want to be careful with these fees and what we do, because we don't want to lose it and lose our grandfathered status to where we would actually have a reduced amount. See what I mean? I was looking at it from the negative side, not the positive side. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So we did. So anyway, that's what we noticed for other states. And then larger cities and international destinations, they do like a head tax or an entrance fee. Those are usually assessed at the point of entry through airlines, airports, etc. Probably maybe even cruise ships or whatever, or on hotel stays. But those are typically collected or remitted to local governments, but rather to a regional authority or larger governmental entity servicing multiple jurisdictions. So those are just some of the other things that we found on fees related to tourism anyway, to kind of give us a point of reference and talking points, I guess. So our challenges are in terms of using these fees for mitigating the impacts of tourism, is the state restricts our revenue sources. Local governments can't enact new taxes unless we go through the state assembly, and ours are restricted either in use or the tax rate is capped, or both actually. And so, you know, one thing we could do is maybe lobby the state to allow us to use our tourism fees for more purposes and not to have them as restricted to tourism relating or putting more heads in beds, but actually to help us mitigate the cost of tourism. So that's just what we found in looking at all of that. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but any questions or discussion?
Amy is study. I'd like to go back to the previous screen where other states are doing the head tax. Is that something that our legal department can sort of look into and see whether or not there's something we can do in South Carolina?
Well, I think they can, yes, but those would be taxes, Councilmember Gregory, so we would have to get permission from the state to do it. It's all part of that state law sort of thing. We'd have to go back and ask for permission to be able to charge a new tax. So that's why.
Okay. We couldn't call it a fee?
It's a tax.
Okay. Just checking.
That's what it is in the other states. That's what they consider. It's a tax, and they call it an excise tax on the bills.
Okay. So we would have to go to the legislature to find out whether or not. Okay.
We would have to get permission. There's, and follow all of the rules to enact a new tax, basically.
Okay.
I'm not saying we can't do that, but that's just what we would need to do.
Because that's a biggie potentially.
And now whether they would allow us like the other, like I said, other states, this is South Carolina, they allow us to allow them to use it for other purposes. We would have to make sure that they would also allow us to use it for other purposes other than tourism as well. So their excise tax on hotel bills, they can use it for other purposes. Now, I don't know what South Carolina would do. So there's just a lot of research we would have to do with that.
Okay.
Anything else? I don't really have anything other than that, unless you all had something to talk about or any other questions.
Is Ross on? Councilman Ross?
I don't think he is.
Okay. Keith? Waring's on?
He is not.
Okay, because the reason why I ask is that Keith and I were having a discussion at dinner last night regarding a 1% fee for every deed. And it's being done, and I may not be explaining this correctly. That's why I wanted Keith on. And because it's my understanding that Daniel Island does it. For every new deed, they get 1% of the price of the property or something. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It goes to the
It's a recording fee.
It goes to the HOA though on Daniel Island. Am I correct, Mike?
I'd have to go back and look, but I'm sure that's right. It was built into the project when they did it. Sort of like what's being proposed at Union Pier with transfer fees. It's
right.
Part and parcel of the deeds that when you take your property as a member of the HOA, there's fees on top of you as a matter of deed recordation. So it's by contract.
Well, I just wonder if that's something that we could do.
It'd be a tax. Problem is it'd be a transfer fee. It'd be a tax.
Okay. Because I mean, what would we probably do? What, billions in deed transfer annually?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something worth pursuing. I don't know.
Would that be levied by the county?
I mean, by whoever. To me, it's just worthy of further discussion and investigation. Especially if we know that it was built in another part of the city's HOA. Well, perhaps it doesn't have to necessarily be the HOA. I just want some research done on it so that we can figure out if it's something that we can do. In addition to what we may be doing, it's similar with Union Pier. I'm trying to see if we can do that across the board.
Okay.
On all sales where there's a deed change in the city of Charleston.
I'll get with legal and we'll look at it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other issues we need to deal with, Amy?
I don't
have
think
the-
so.
I
Not
don't
today.
either. Anything else anybody want to put on the table for discussion? If not, yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregory, could I
yes, Mayor.
add one thing? I'm back at my office, by the way, I just got here, but for some reason it's not letting me connect with my computer. But anyway, just maybe this is for your information or a note of interest that at the Johns Island Task Force meeting that I left just before getting on this call, they had a list of city issues that they wanted to address this year. And Christopher Morgan from Planning Department was there. So we were represented, but one of them was, in fact, asking about the municipal improvement district that we had talked about for Johns Island. And, you know, I know not everybody out there is for it, but this particular group, I think, supports it. And so they were asking, well, is there any news on our mid? We want to see whether the city's going to pursue that so we can get some infrastructure money out here for the island. So I just put that in everybody's ear.
Okay. Because we did vote on it, didn't we, Mayor? Council?
You know,
Yes, it's in place.
It's in play.
Right, I mean, and we had the grievance procedure and all of that, so. I think Julia said we may need one more reading.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
I thought it was.
Robert Summerfield is on here too. He might be able to help us. I know that there was more that we needed to do.
Okay, it seemed to me it was kind of on pause, and then this other fee discussion came up, and we were kind of waiting to see which way we were going to go, I thought. So if it's just one more reading away, then that's news that we can pass along to them.
All right, we'll get an update and we'll send it to everybody just so everybody knows exactly what we need to do with that.
Okay, great.
It's been a
Thank
while
you.
since we talked about it, so I'm sorry, I can't remember where we are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay,
Mayor, you're back. Anything else?
I'm back. The only other fee like that we talked about before, I don't think Councilmember Seekings felt too positive about it, was trying to get some kind of roadway improvement fund going on. And of course, what they did in Greenville County was add a car registration fee or car fee, vehicle fee for road improvements to your car registration fee and or property tax. I'd certainly be open if anybody had any ideas of
But
a fee.
Mayor, and he can speak for himself, but weren't we trying to get fees that would not be put on the residents, that would be borne by the tourists? If we go the registration route with cars, we're putting it on our citizens.
Yeah, if anybody's got an idea how to just invoice a fee to tourists for our roadways, my ears are wide open.
Okay.
You got any ideas?
No, I don't, Mayor. Mike, are you there?
I'm here. I am here. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dudley, Councilmember Gregory, sorry, you're correct. And sort of in the framework of the discussion we had with the mayor, I did believe that we should look at ways to levy some fees on tourists rather than residents. And, you know, starting and leading out of the box with a car registration fee would be hitting our residents, not our tourists. I think, you know, I mean, we've we're going to have to get help from either the county or the state either way. I think one of the things that this committee can do is sort of set a list of priorities to pursue in areas where we're going to need help if we're going to levy additional fees. And I would certainly look to the tourism industry first rather than the residents who live here. And I do think some form of a head fee / tax on visitors that can be levied somehow through the hospitality ranks is probably a good place to start. But again, that's just one person thinking, and I'm sure there's plenty of other ideas out there.
And to me, that's major, because that has the potential of bringing in a considerable amount of revenue.
Definitely. But, if you go back to the residents and say, well, we've gone through this whole process, we've thought about ways to sort of raise revenues in the city, and we've got 8 million visitors, and we've got 150,000 residents, and our number one idea is to hit you with a car tax, I think there'll probably be some questions. So I think probably balancing that against some ways to raise revenue from the 8 million is a good thing to at least be thinking about.
Well, so what are you proposing? How are we going to do that?
Well, Mayor, I don't know that I have 100% proposal for this, but I do think the avenue to do it is somehow through the accommodations fees that we raise. And I get it, and I heard Amy, and I'm certainly well aware of the fact that we're 1% above where we otherwise might be when we split between the city and the county. But I think that's the area. We're going to have to get help from the county, the legislature anyway. I think that's a good place to look. If we're going to levy additional fees from people who are visiting here, it's going to have to be some form of a use fee, because we can't just have people check in at the border, right? Either
a visitor's fee, yeah.
Right.
Admission.
So the biggest use of people who are visiting here, sort of in terms of gross dollars, is in a hotel. There's others, right? They ride carriages and they do other things in the tourism area, but to identify a way to raise monies from people who are visiting here from 50 miles away for more than one night at a time, I think the hotel avenue is the place to look. So without a specific proposal, that would certainly be the avenue that I think we should pursue.
What about all these short-term rentals?
A little tougher, but certainly something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other thing we noticed too from other states as well, is their definition is a lot more different than ours. So ours is like 90 days of people visiting for 90 days. And a lot of states, it's 6 months as well. So there's that difference. There's just a lot of this other states are a lot less restrictive. But Councilmember Seekings, if we can look into that excise tax sort of.
Right. I think that's the
want
way
us to
go.
do that. We can.
There's other cities that are doing it. I've never gone back and looked at the particulars of how they do it. The one that comes to mind, the easy one that sort of to talk about, is Venice. Venice has a $25 a head visitor fee tax. How they're collecting it, I have no earthly idea, other than Venice is a one-way in, one-way out place, and maybe there literally is a gate at the entry. But I think that's kind of the way to look at it, is somehow to figure out a way to collect it in the most efficient legal manner to take the onus off residents and put it back on visitors. Now, that being said, it's going to take some work, but I think as a matter of policy, we at this committee and as a council should sort of at least try to prioritize our efforts, and then talk to our lobbyists in Columbia, talk to the county, and see the different avenues that are available to us, or might be if we go out and sort of argue our case. Just go be advocates, right? And I think that's what we got to do. And I think, Mayor, I don't know the answer to this, but if we wanted to levy a car tax, we'd have to go get some help too. I don't think we can just do that off the cuff. So if we're going to go exercise lobbying activities, let's see if we can hit the tourists first rather than the residents. That's kind of my general policy thesis.
In concept, I'm fine. I just,
Right.
It's not
How we
just
do
a
it,
grant problem.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's, I think in Venice, you're right. There's just that basically one point on and off the old historic city. I think I remember years and years ago when I went there that you had to pay a little few dollars when you went across the public transportation into the city as a kind of overall fee. But, we can't I don't see how you do that here.
That'd be tough, right? I mean, you got to capture them in a place where they are for more than a second, right?
That's right.
The other place to look, and I'm just thinking off the cuff now, I don't have a sort of roadmap to this, but it's special events. And we've got some pretty large special events out there. Are we capitalizing on those as much as we possibly can? That's something to think about as well.
We're looking at special event fees.
Okay, great. I mean, I think, Amy, that's another place to, because, a large scale special events, and Lord knows we've got lots of them. We saw one this past weekend, and we've seen 3 in the last 5 weeks or 6 weeks. That's a pass through anyway. So it's just something we ought to think about and look at, because between the bridge one, what I like to affectionately call North Charleston Wine and Food, but Charleston Wine and Food, and Seaweed, that's 100,000, 120,000 people that come through here. That's doubling our population. And if we can make some hay out of that for necessary services and infrastructure to support the people who go to those events, why wouldn't we at least look at that?
I'm willing. Somebody tell me how you would collect it, where you would collect it. My ears are wide open.
Well, I'm happy to Mayor, go and do a little advance work on that and report back to what I find, and anyone else wants to join in, come on, we'll go see what we can divine. What are really the question sitting here at the bottom of the governmental rung is, what are our statutory limitations?
Correct.
And if we have them, how do we get around them? And if we have to get around them or get through them, do we have some support at some level above us to do that? I mean, I think that's the analysis, right?
Yeah, and it may be true in some cases, like the one that scares me is accommodations tax, because I don't want to upset the apple cart. But I thought the whole conversation about this new act was that we could, put in place a fee on our own, so to speak, without having to go get permission in Columbia.
That's how I read it. You're talking about 236.
Yeah, that's what they've been saying.
Right.
And that's what brought up the idea about Greenville, because that was the same scenario. They didn't have to get permission from the legislature now that passed to legally collect that fee. But I get it. I'd rather get money for visitors than residents if I could. That's my top preference.
And I think
everybody that drives to the city, could we collect $10? I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what Amy, I think, is looking at, is sort of what our now bandwidth is with that legislation in place. And, let's go figure it out.
That's right.
All right.
So we're still going to keep working on all this. So we'll just, keep everybody up to date.
Okay.
All righty. Terrific.
But
any other?
Mayor,
Thanks, Amy.
as long as we don't just keep talking about it at this point, I'm where you are on my, we've got to really, hit the streets and figure out how to do this.
Yeah, literally.
Somebody's doing it. Maybe
What's
not in this
amazing, I
state.
think, council members, there's a lot of cities that don't, and there's not a lot of cities that really are like ours. I mean, just think of the ratios that we're talking about: 150,000 residents and 8 million visitors. It's hard to find another place, not just in the state, but in the country, that has that kind of imbalance in terms of populace in place at any given time, and needs to build infrastructure and have services. We just got to figure out a way to sort of flatten that curve between residents paying for it and tourists getting the benefit of it, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Didn't
Any
hear you,
other
Mayor.
business come before us? Any other business come before us this afternoon?
I don't have anything else. Our next meeting is on May 3rd. So.
Okay. All right. Hearing none, we stand adjourned, and thank you, Councilmember Gregory, for leading us, and thanks for y'all's attendance today.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank y'all.